Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Borussia Dortmund, Atletico Madrid. Borussia Dortmund crushed Atletico Madrid in one of the big Champions League games of the week. How did Borussia Dortmund do it? Where did Diego Simeone's men go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how Dortmund beat Atletico Madrid. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you notifications regarding our daily, organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down how both sides look to approach the game. We're going to get to the first half and see how Dortmund had a bit of the upper hand. Then get to the second half to see how Simeone tried to change things and how Hakimi played a key role in Dortmund finishing Atletico Madrid. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We have Dortmund in a 4-2-3-1. Mario Götze just ahead of Marco Reus. Out in wide areas, Brun Larsen and Pulisic. And in midfield, Witsel and Delaney. Then we get to Atletico Madrid. The only real surprise is that Thomas Partey started in midfield alongside Saul, no Rodri, which means that out in wide areas, they went with Lemar, they went with Koke, and up front, Diego Costa and Antoine Griezmann. So first, let's get into the first half, more so looking at the approaches of both sides and see how they were able to get a grip to the game and who really had the upper hand. So when we get into Dortmund and Atletico Madrid, 4-4-2 against 4-2-3-1, what we have here with Dortmund is the fact that they don't have a central striker. So they have Mario Götze looking to drop in deep, pull out markers, link play with his back to goal, possibly pick it up in the pockets of spaces and run at goal, whereas Reus also able to just push forward, make those darting runs, drop in when need to be to link play with the midfielders and help Dortmund swiftly push forward. When they didn't have the ball, they dropped off into two banks of four. They were very organized in that sense, similar to Atletico Madrid. What was interesting about Reus and Götze was the fact that they often dropped in to nip possession from behind. Atletico Madrid never really had time on the ball in that sense, and they always had to be careful of their shoulders to ensure that those two players never really got in. We saw Thomas in the earlier stages get nipped by Götze, who picked up the ball and eventually led to Hernandez fouling him. Koke on several occasions, once on the left-hand side, once in central areas when he dropped into that space, was dispossessed by Reus again. Reus had a knack of doing it throughout the game. There's one time he did it to Saul near the edge of the box, just coming in from behind, nipping the ball away to dispossess them and push forward. But their style was pretty simple. They were dropping off, very organized in that sense. The wider players pushed out to ensure that there were no overloads. When Götze looked to press the center backs, he would press forward. What happened was that one of the spare midfielders would step into his place to ensure that that Thomas or Saul were pressed in midfield, and they were good in that regard. They had a lot of the ball for the most part because Atletico Madrid did push forward in the earlier stages trying to press, and it was very simple because essentially it is 4-4-2 against 4-4-2, so every marker is able to kind of push out onto theirs and really compress the space, so that was really difficult for them. But as the game wore on, they knew that Dortmund really lacked the ability to break down organized sides. It's been one of their flaws throughout the season. So it looked like Simeone realized that, you know, if I sit a bit deeper, drop off, and then look to hit on the counterattack, which they try to exploit the space in the wider areas where they push the fullbacks forward, then they figured that perhaps they could get something going there through Diego Costa's power and pace, through Griezmann's ability to find that final pass to also drift into those channels. So they did drop off into that space as well. One of the key elements to their half was the fact that some point between the 10 to 15 minute mark, Lemar and Koke swapped flanks, which meant that Koke now was sitting on Hakimi, who was one of the game's, if not the game's, decisive player by driving forward, and Koke had no answer for him. As for Lemar, what he offered down the other side was that they try to create overloads in the sense where they knew that there was going to be a press from the left-hand side, and what happened there on Luis. So what they try to do is they try to get Lemar out into the wider area so that he could attract the marker there. And what would happen there is that if Lamar tracked the runner, Griezmann was able to dart into that space. We saw that on several occasions, but Delaney tracked well. There was only one occasion that we'll get to in a bit where that did cause a hassle, but we saw them try to create those 3v2s down that flank. But besides that, it was a very interesting half, not too many chances. So let's get to the key talking points of the first half to see how Dortmund were able to get forward and what Atletico Madrid tried to do to get ahead. Atletico Madrid's chances really stem from the fact that they were looking to try and find the space in the channels. That's obvious. They're dropping off the two banks of four. They're defending deep. They're allowing Witsel and Larson to get on the ball. But the thing here is that if they're looking to break into that space, this Dortmund side is kind of built for that. Although they are prone to error, you think about Zagadou and Diallo, all athletic and pacey. Piszczek and Hakimi as well. We saw in the opening stages where Griezmann was able to pick up the ball between the lines and he instantly clipped the ball into Costa, spinning off his marker into that space in the channel. But Hakimi was aware of it. He tracked it superbly and was able to pick up the ball, and then that was how that play was ended. You see Costa looking to spin in behind. That was also a threat because these two center backs, they're strong, they're pacey. It doesn't really fit the matchup that Diego Costa wants. It doesn't really make him effective, and that was one of the issues that Atletico Madrid had, and also the fact that he doesn't look 100% match fit or up to speed yet. The sharpness just wasn't there. We get to another opportunity. This is one of the opportunities I was stepping about before where they're trying to get the overload down the left-hand side. We see it early on where Luis is being pressed by Pulisic. What happens here now is that Lamar kind of tucks into that space out in a wider area because Luis is a bit narrow to pull out Piszczek. So when he pulls out Piszczek, now Griezmann's able to make that run where the pass is played into, and he runs off Diallo, breaks into the box. You have Koke and you have Costa breaking into the box as well. But the pullback is see Zagadou clear his lines. And again, Dortmund finding a way to really stop Atletico Madrid from breaking down that channel. It was very close, but Zagadou tracked it well. Diallo did come out, but there was one of the issues that sometimes they do have. Are the center backs reliable enough? Griezmann and Atletico Madrid found a way down that side, and that was one of the few opportunities where they were able to overload because they could easily get Delaney, who was on for the half, to push over to that side to really make the difference. One of the final opportunities I will look at for Atletico, because they didn't really create that many chances in the first half, and that was one of the big worrying signs for them. We think about it, what happens here is that Thomas has to drop off deeper to get on the ball, because one of the things that did stem from Atletico Madrid pushing forward was the fact that, like I said, Royce and Götze were sticking on to Saul and Thomas, so they were unable to really take control of the game in the midfield and dominate that area. So what happens there is that he does drop off into that space, and he's able to get past Larson, get past Götze, and he sees Lamar drop off into that into that center pocket. He plays it into Lamar. You have the Dortmund backline that is very narrow. And what happens here now is that as narrow as they are, Costa is able to peel off Piszczek, and the ball is played over the top. Piszczek tracks him well, holds him off, and then pokes it into the path of Saul. And that is when we see Royce step in and nick the ball away from him. But when we think about it, Atletico Madrid not really effective on the counterattack based on the fact that Dortmund had enough athletic players that were pacey and strong enough to deal with their threat, and Dortmund really did hold on to the ball very well, and the matchup was very organized, very cagey, but those were the chances that Atletico got. So now let's get to Dortmund and see how they were able to go into halftime up 1-0. For Dortmund, it was a bit different. Atletico Madrid drop off also in those two banks of four. And what they try to do is to ensure that they're always doubled up out in wide areas. And in the midfield, they kind of sat off. If they didn't have Griezmann and Costa stepping to Witsel and Larson, or Delaney, when they did push forward, they would have the two men kind of push forward there. But as the game wore on, they dropped off a bit deeper. They were worried about the threat of Royce. They were worried about the threat of Götze. We saw Hakimi being the cop-out here because Dortmund struggled to create chances from open play. We've seen it all season. What happens here is that he's constantly getting past Koke. We saw in the first instance where he gets past Koke, plays the ball into Götze, who pulls out Godin, gets it back, drives past Thomas, but is unable to get a shot off. That was a warning sign for this Atletico Madrid side, and it happens later on, not too far off the 5 to 10 minute mark. He's able to get past Koke again, play the ball into Götze, who's able to send it back to him. He's able to run across. The pass is across Thomas. He gets across Thomas, but then Saul and Thomas end up coming across him. So once they come across him, the ball ends up being poked into the path of Pulisic, who fires a shot over the net. It's a great opportunity for Pulisic. He probably should do better. But then again, we look at how Hakimi's breaking forward, and Dortmund had to keep going down that avenue, and it did lead to the goal. Again, the goal, we see Delaney come off for Dahoud. Dahoud comes into midfield and offers a bit more energy, looking to play forward passes, able to get across the pitch much faster. We see him slide the ball to Hakimi. This time, they're in good position here. Hakimi has Koke and Juan Fran on him. Instead of running at them, he pulls it back to Witsel, who does step forward. Thomas steps to him. He's able to cut in on Thomas and fire a deflected shot that deflects off Hernandez and into the back of the net. When we think about it, Thomas really struggled in the first half. Him and Saul not gaining control of the midfield, easily being bypassed by Witsel and Hakimi on several occasions. And now Dortmund take the lead. And we think about one more opportunity. This goes to show for Royce. Royce was good at really pressing and breaking in to nip the ball back and have Dortmund aim to break on the counterattack. This time we see Diallo, as the half is coming to an end, Dortmund sit off even deeper. Diallo step forward, no one's pressing him. What we have here is the back four, obviously narrow. We have Pulisic sitting in between Lamar and Saul. We have Royce looking to float in between Saul and Thomas. What happens here is that he's able to play this pass in between not only Lamar and the midfielder, but also Hernandez and Luis. And what happens here is that he plays that pass in, and we see Royce from that midfield zone run through the center midfielders off Hernandez to get onto the ball, but Hernandez tracks it well, and it leads to a corner kick. A half that really didn't have many chances, but when you break them down as a whole, Dortmund had a clear outlet, and that was through Hakimi breaking through Koke. Atletico Madrid not really having enough counterattacking options based on the fact of Dortmund's back four, so they need to change things up. So let's get to the second half and see how Simeone aimed to do that. Simeone's second half changes made sense. He brought on Rodri, took off Thomas, who struggled in the first half. And what you have here now is Saul playing from the right-hand side, and he's forcing Hakimi narrow, which creates space for Juan Fran to push forward. Lamar stays wide, but he plays a bit deeper, and he hugs the touchline, looking to run at Pulisic, looking to run at Piszczek, which means now you have Rodri and Koke in midfield. They're able to retain possession, able to play passes forward, not too worried about the pressing of Royce and Götze, and Dortmund were sitting back deeper. The other thing that really helped Atletico Madrid was that they pressed from the front, they closed down their markers, they were really looking to gain an advantage out in those wider areas. We saw it early on where you had the ball played into Berkey, tried to play it into Larson, and what happened there is that Juan Fran stepped in, and that led to a near chance. And then we look at how they were set up. For the most part, they were dropping off deeper into two banks of four. They were unable to really get a counter-attacking threat. Even on goal kicks, they were looking to press Atletico Madrid with the wider players in Lamar and Griezmann pressing out to the center backs, Costa sitting on Witsel, and from there they were able to step forward and squeeze in. So with that being said, Dortmund didn't really have any way out of the back, and considering the fact that Diallo and Zagadou are prone to making mistakes, that was probably in their best interest. But when we get to Atletico Madrid's best chances, it stems from the fact that Saul now was playing a key role because he was playing a bit more advanced, and that they had control of the game, and Dortmund didn't really have a counter-attacking threat. Saul was pegging back Hakimi, like I said, who was Dortmund's key attacking threat in that opening half. And what we see here is the opening stages, Godin flicks on a header to Saul from point blank range, and he guides his effort inches wider than that. That was a warning sign. But what they often did was that the way that they were set up, they were able to play diagonals out Koke switches out a diagonal to Juan Fran. We have Pulisic on the opposite side stepping to him. He instantly, Juan Fran pokes it into Saul, who cuts in on Hakimi, who's not tight, and he curls his effort off the crossbar. Warning sign for Dortmund. We look at another opportunity where it's Rodri stepping up, and what happens here is that he sees Pulisic, who is back in his natural position, and Dahoud, and he plays a pass into Lamar, tucking into that space there. Lamar ends up driving forward, but they both swarm him. He turns back outside on Dahoud, curls a diagonal out to Saul, and what happens here, he curls it out to Saul. Now we see Juan Fran get on the run. He's trying to make that overlapping run. What happens here is that Saul cuts in on Hakimi, cuts in on Saul, but fires his shot low and hard to Berkey. Juan Fran was often a threat down that right-hand side, overlapping, but none of his crosses really led to any golden opportunities, and that was the key spell for Atletico Madrid to start the second half. They had their chances, they were pushing forward, but eventually midway through, Dortmund got back into the game. The other change that they made was that they brought on for Saul, and only one real chance prior to Dortmund running away with the game saw Godin and Royce battle for a 50-50 ball, and then it was slid into the path of Correa breaking in. He's 1v1 with the keeper, fires the shot off Berkey and off the post, but that was about it for Atletico Madrid. But they did press hard in the second half. They closed down spaces from the front. They had the threat of Saul, but now let's get to Dortmund and see how Hakimi once again played a key role in the second half and ended up winning the game for Dortmund. Atletico Madrid were able to turn the second half in the sense that they brought on a replacement for Larson, and that was Guerrero. We saw Hakimi and Royce kind of bumble a chance in the second half into the box where Royce probably should have shot, but Hakimi came across. But they got it right eventually. What we see here for the build-up to the second goal is Diallo stepping forward, and what happens here is that Diallo is able to play the pass into Guerrero, who was narrow, and he drags out Juan Fran. As he drags out Juan Fran, what happens here is that he plays it into Pulisic, who did drop in a bit narrow, and as he pulls it into Pulisic sees Rodri coming across, but Rodri was trying to get into there, trying to get into Guerrero. So as he plays it into Pulisic now, you have Koke coming across, and he pokes it to Dahoud, and in that time, what we have here is Hakimi making the run deep into that channel, and the ball is played into him behind the fullback, and he breaks forward, and with Godin trying to come across a bit, and Fran trying to recover, we have Royce making a run to drag out Hernandez, and Guerrero continuing his run into the box, and the pullback falls to Guerrero, and he's able to fire his shot past the keeper. Sancho eventually came on for Pulisic, and again, we see Dortmund on the counterattack. This time it stems from Hakimi, who's able to hold off Rodri, and he's able to hold off Juan Fran. He's able to turn them both on the 50-50, play the pass into Götze, who's driving in. Now all you have here is Koke and Hernandez, and what happens there is that he's able to poke the ball between them both for Hakimi, who breaks free in on goal, and he has Sancho coming across. He pulls it to him, and he taps his effort into the net. We have Felipe Luis playing a poor pass into Guerrero to make it 4-0. But when we break down the game as a whole, Atletico Madrid, not much of a counter-attacking threat. Hakimi was constantly getting past Koke. Diego Simeone in the second half tried to change it, press forward. They got their chances from Saul, but as the game wore on, Dortmund stayed more comfortable. They made the changes, and as they grew back into the game, they still had that counter-attacking threat that a laggy and very slow Atletico Madrid, which is rare for them, weren't able to cope with, and now the group stands in Dortmund's hands. But let me know what you guys think. Will Dortmund win this group? How will Atletico Madrid reply? And which one of these sides look best suited to go far in the Champions League and win their domestic trophies? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.